Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. So you are here today because you wanted to hear about the power of EI and DEI. And this is a presentation that we wanted to make sure that students of color are able to engage in the conversation. So be prepared to engage, and we'll start the conversation. So my name is Mykesha Plesko. I'm the Director of Education for Grahi. And I have Mr. Stacy, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Absolutely. Stacy Baker, Pathways Program Coordinator. Welcome.
And you're going to see a few other individuals who are going to join us with our panel conversation. Mr. Miguel Gonzalez, Mr. Kaylon Shackelford, and Ms. Deanna King. And we want to also introduce our moderator for today. Our guest speaker is Ms. Shaquanda Gordon. She is the HR Executive and DEI Officer for SS Consulting and Services, LLC, and she also is contracted with Grahi. Welcome. We're so excited about you being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
super excited to share some of my thoughts with the team tonight.
Thank you. We have a few housekeeping things that we need to speak about. So if we can go to the next slide here. So this program will be broadcast live on our social media platforms and will be recorded. Please mute your microphone, which is mainly for the panelists. And feel free to ask questions as this is a participatory discussion. So please enter your questions into the chat. You may also submit a question to our chat or speak during the designated Q&A, which we'll have a Q&A towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, listen, team, I'm so excited to be here tonight. You know, we've put a lot of thought into the messaging for this evening. And when Mykesha and Mr. Stacy reached out to me and said, "Hey, Shaquanda, can you come join us for what we think will be a very powerful conversation?" I signed up right away. Want to start to introduce this concept of the power of EI and DEI. And when we talk about EI, it's not the equity and inclusion that you would normally think about when you dissect the acronym DEI. It is emotional intelligence. So the power of emotional intelligence in diversity, equity, and inclusion for students of color. And so tonight we're going to have a conversation, and this conversation is around, one, setting the stage. Let's talk about the complexities of being a student of color. We're going to examine what culture means in the context of this. Then we're going to spend some time unpacking aggression. Once we do that, we'll get into the meat of what does it mean to invoke, to bring forth a level of emotional intelligence. So again, super excited about this conversation tonight. Thank you so much for our panelists who are joining me tonight to just kind of explore this topic and have some robust dialogue. Our hope is that we all walk away with learning at least one more thing to put in our toolkits to face the world and the complexities of being a student of color in today's society. So let's get started. Let's talk about, I want to start with this quote, the impacts of microaggressions. It says, in college, I went through a process where there was a sense of otherness, where white was assumed to be the norm. And if you were not white, then you were the other. This is the sentiment of most students of color across most educational institutions. And it doesn't start in college. This experience is shared across a myriad of systems in and across the United States. And so for purposes of our conversation tonight, let's align on what some of these complexities of being a student of color, what do those look like? So let's agree to the following complexities. One, that there's this feeling where we have to censor ourselves. There's feelings of exclusion and isolation. Our curriculums sometimes lack representation of cultural and diverse views and facts. There's a lack of acknowledgement of contributions of people of color in our learnings. And there's also these common barriers that traditional and non-traditional students face that are not taken into consideration as we move about and go about our studies. So as people of color, we can truly appreciate these challenges of navigating these predominantly white spaces and the white culture. And so we talked about examining culture. Well, what is culture? The term culture is varied in its definition. As such, it cannot be limited to just one simple explanation. So for purposes tonight, culture can be described as a sum total of collective human beliefs with a structured system that is specific to a nation or a time period. So let's take the United States. In the United States, the dominant culture is your white, Western European male, middle class individual between the ages of 16 and 65. So knowing this, it literally affects how the average person shows up. This can also shape the views of the majority and the way that we show. So it shapes the views of the majority and the way that they show up. And so we're going to dissect that a little bit more as we move to unpack aggression. So whereas we usually hear a lot about microaggressions, these are your subtle, covert, unintentional, these little policy changes here and there. They're typically non-physical. We usually hear about microaggressions, but here's the reality. Over the past 3 to 5 years, the social climate, we've seen a lot more macroaggression. So I don't want us to disregard the fact that we are facing not only microaggressions, but we're also facing macroaggressions. And these have become increasingly present. I mean, we're talking hate crimes, we're talking physical violence, we were talking overt racial slurs. So I really want to make sure that we're exploring this so that we can discern the difference between the two and be better prepared on how we're going to react and respond to those. So in order to do that, I am going to ask you to participate in a quick little poll. In your chat, there is a link. I'm asking that you please click that link and take that quick poll. And then we're going to talk about the results here in a second. Give you about 10, 15 seconds to complete this poll. I feel like I need some Jeopardy music right now. All right. Hopefully you have had a chance to take the poll. Can we see the results of the poll, or can we share those?
I am just downloading them right now, and I will share them in 1 minute.
Good deal. So the reason why I wanted to take this poll, again, the questions like, have you ever seen a Confederate flag? Have you ever been complimented for speaking well as a person of color? Have you ever been called a racial slur? Have you been placed on a team with less than high performing students because you were a person of color? Have your ideas been overlooked but later acknowledged when someone else says them? So 100% of us, there's 12 of us who've taken this poll, 100% of us have seen a Confederate flag. 67% of us have been complimented for speaking well. What we need to understand is that oftentimes is not a compliment, because what would make you think that I wouldn't speak well? What indicators would you have when that compliment is given to you to think you wouldn't? Have you ever been called a racial slur? 83% of us. Have you ever been placed on a team with less than high performing individuals? Both that question and being overlooked came in at 75%. So again, what does this mean? What does this mean in the world and the space that we are in? These are examples of both micro and macro aggressions. And so I want to dissect what aggressions mean a little bit further, because it's going to give us a little bit more context so we can have some robust conversation here in a minute. So unpacking it, what is aggression? I went to Webster, I went to Wikipedia, I went to a couple of different sites to really get down to the root of what aggression means. Aggression can take on a variety of forms. It can be expressed physically, communicated verbally, or non-verbally. They're often social interactions with the intent of inflicting damage or harm upon another individual. It can be physical or verbal behavior intended to cause harm to someone. It's characterized by behaviors that are intended to harm social relationships of an individual or a group. When you look at the interdisciplinary perspective, aggression is regarded as a mechanism, listen to this, a mechanism formed during the course of evolution in order to assert oneself, relatives, or friends against others to gain or defend resources by harmful, damaging means. These mechanisms are often motivated by emotions like fear or frustration, anger, feelings of stress, dominance, or just simple pleasure. And so when you think about this and you combine these two terms, micro, macro aggression, you look at all of these definitions or descriptors of them, this is typically how dominant cultures, dominant tribes, dominant groups stay dominant, is by imparting or enforcing some type of aggression, whether it be micro or macro. And again, it is to insert themselves and remain in that space. So I want to talk a little bit further about what that looks like. So again, discerning what a microaggression is versus what a macro is. These are headlines. These are headlines from 2022. So headlines that identify what I would call macroaggressions. These are in your face. You don't have to think about its intent. When you look at them, you clutch your pearls, your heart starts to beat fast. You're like, wow, I cannot believe in 2022 that we have West Virginia teachers allegedly calling a student a monkey. I cannot believe in 2022 that there's a male high school teacher seen on video, caught on video, calling a student a racial slur. These, again, are the macro aggressions that are happening every day. And most of these, to protect the innocents, are not happening in college campuses. They're happening in high school. So it goes back to my point earlier around the fact that we are not just starting to engage or experience these micro and macro aggressions. They are taking place in all levels across many systems. So then, Shaquanda, what is a microaggression? These are those little digs, the ones that kind of make you pause, like, did they say what I think they just said? These are the ones that when you're writing in silence or you're replaying your day and you reflect back on your day, you realize my energy is off, my energy shifted, and you tie it back to an encounter that you maybe had earlier that day. You know, everyone can succeed if you just work hard enough. Oh, you're so articulate, like we talked about earlier. Where are you from? All lives matter. So not Black lives matter, but all lives matter. So when you talk about the LGBTQI plus group, is this just a phase? So what's the man? Who's the man in the relationship? There's these little innuendos that are put out there in forms of microaggression that cause you pause, but they're damaging. And so I wanted to, again, be able to discern between what a microaggression is and what a macroaggression is. This is the part of our time together where I really want to get into some robust conversation. So I've given you a little context. We've talked about micro and macroaggressions. We've talked about cultures and dominance. We talked about the core root cause or the root word aggression and what it is and how it's used. So now I have this two-part question that I'd like to discuss. Talk to me about, have you ever experienced a microaggression? So that's the first part of my question. So I want to open it up to our panelists to just share some insight. If you all can just share with us experiences you've had with microaggressions.
I can go first.
Thanks, Deanna.
So recently I actually just went to the makeup store, Ulta, spending a lot of money. Already know I'm spending a lot of money. And since I walked in the door, I just kept getting asked, did I need help? And I probably was asked that I need help by if you've been in there, it's a lot of staff, probably about 10 staff. And it was to the point where I wasn't even able to even remember what I came in there to look for. So I just kind of just walked out because it was kind of like, give me a second to look around. And then if I say and give a signal that I need help, I'll need help. But I don't need to keep being asked since I walked in the door if I need help.
Deanna, tell me, what were you thinking as when they were asking? Because if you think about it in this context, they're just friendly customer service associates and they're here to make sure you have a great shopping experience. Tell me what prompted you to feel like there was this microaggression happening?
Especially one moment where I was actually just 2 hours in the door, wasn't even that far. And I had already just got asked from somebody. I just walked away, and then here comes another person that just watched that person ask me. I'm just picking up an item, looking at it, and here comes somebody else. And I'm like, no, thank you. Here comes somebody. It's just like it kept happening back to back. They're not even giving the last person a chance to even walk away or for me to even walk anywhere different. I didn't even get a chance to even be in the store. Like if you ever been in Ulta, the middle where they have the perfume, I didn't even get a chance to make it that far. So.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you. Anyone else? Kaylon, I think looks like you wanted to come off mute.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of nodding. I appreciate you sharing that, Deanna. Mine's happened in a professional setting. I was in a meeting with my peers. So we had no managers in the room, and we were tasking out some spreadsheets and whatnot. And there was a coworker in the room that was an older white man. He was about 40 years old. And he kept asking me if I needed help understanding the topic. And this wasn't something that he was asking in a group. It would be like, hey, guys, we're going to put these things and organize it this way. Kaylon, I can help you if you need it. And for me, the first time I really didn't get it. I was like, maybe, I'm not the newest person here. So I was just probably given a little bit more benefit of the doubt. And that's something that I wish that I wouldn't have nipped in the bud right then and there. Because for the whole meeting, I allowed this man to continue asking me if I needed help. And I continued saying, no, I don't. I know how to do everything else everybody else knows how to do. And I came prepared. But it kept making me feel as if I wasn't a part of the conversation or wasn't equal to everybody else that's in this room. And it was frustrating. But for me, and I'm sure many others have done this out of just a mindset of just getting to the next stage. I was more focused on getting the work done rather than addressing that in the moment. But if I go back in time, I would have addressed it differently. But that's definitely what happened.
Yeah. How did it make you feel?
Less than made me feel as if I didn't come prepared. It made me feel nervous. Really, it was like a burning sensation in my chest where I was like, okay, now I feel like I got to say things and I don't know how to articulate myself and how I feel right now because I'm so frustrated right now. So I kind of just was quiet. I didn't really, at that point I was like 21 years old. So it was more so just like, I'm just going to not say anything right now because I'm nervous and kind of embarrassed right now.
Embarrassed. I like that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Miguel, anything to add to that, Mr. Stacy?
Well, I'm sure. A couple of occasions I have been asked or been told, Stacy, you speak very well. And interestingly enough, this happened both from a white person and also a black person. Walked into a bank and a young man asked where I was from. Told him I was from Detroit, and he said, "You don't look like you're from Detroit, or you don't sound like you're from Detroit." I didn't quite know what to do with that.
Right.
Kaylon, I'm like you. I had sort of this burning sensation in my chest, and again, just wanting to respond, but again, how? Similar happened at a former, place of employment where that was mentioned to me, on a few occasions. Stacy speaks very, very eloquently. And again, to one of your points earlier, Shaquanda, why wouldn't I speak eloquently? I mean, am I not supposed to? That was one of the questions that, I began to think about. But again, that burning sensation happened when it was said. Interestingly enough, it happened in a group setting, and so I didn't have time to even respond. My response could have been again bad, in terms of me being offended, but again, I couldn't, and so I had to sort of put on a happy face and keep moving.
Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah, so I was actually sitting here thinking about two separate examples and trying to figure out which one I wanted to talk about, but they both relay the same message. And so there was the two times, one where I was dealing with a customer at a restaurant I used to work for back in a long time ago, and then another one was dealing with a coworker. And these things actually didn't even cross my mind. It wasn't until somebody brought it up and stood up for me that I realized they were microaggressions. And what would happen was I've always been a pretty good worker, at least in my opinion. And every now and then, person, whether it be the customer, they would be a frequent customer, or my coworker, they would walk by and always call me buddy, and would constantly call me that. And me not paying attention to it, because I'm a type of person, I stick to my work. Like, I don't really socialize too much during work, because I'm about just getting my job done and clocking out so I can go, relax and be social outside of work. And it wasn't until a supervisor stepped up and was like, "Hey, you see, he has a name tag. Like he belongs here." And then they asked me my name, and then they told the person, "You should call that person Miguel for the the rest of the time while he's working here." And then I began to reflect on that, like, wow, did I miss something here? And as I began to like reflect on that the next year, next couple months or whatever, I began to get a little frustrated as to like, wow, this person like try to talk down upon me or kind of devalue or belittle me in some instance. And so that's kind of like my most recent scenarios that come to mind when I think about microaggressions. And because like it's things that I didn't notice like right away, like some of our other like panelists, it's things that kind of make me put up a guard now when I go and interact with other people, and I've become very aware of like what people are saying.
Yeah.
And so
You become hypersensitive. You're like,
yeah.
did you what'd you say? You do. You become unfortunately immune to it, but you're also, when you say guarded, you've been emotionally tagged. We'll talk about emotional tagging in a minute, and you're looking for and listening for those instances where something is going to happen and trigger that same scenario, and in hopes that maybe you're a little bit more emotionally in tune and can then respond. But you don't ever want to be caught off guard anymore, right? You don't want to be caught in that situation. So it's almost like you're always ready. That if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. It's like you're constantly in that mode as a person of color. And unfortunately, society has kind of shaped us in that way in some instances, right?
And I just want to share with you just a couple of things, because being in long-term care, if there isn't a lot of people of color in that field, I'm a licensed nursing home administrator. And when you're looking at those executive roles or you're looking at those regional roles from a company and trying to apply to them and interview for them, I remember sitting in an office and the executive was like, "Hey, this person has to be the face of this company." And he looked at a picture that I had with my husband, and I had my hair straightened in the picture, and my hair was not straightened in that meeting. And he was like, "I really like your hair like that," and that stuck with me it's been years. That has stuck with me. And there was another incident that was related to the same concept of I was addressing a concern around religion and race within our company. And I was talking through it with some leadership team members just to make sure that we are being proactive and advocating for employees. And then my boss at the time came to me and said, "You didn't protect them." And what he meant by them was people that were not of color. And I just was baffled, but I paused in both those incidences. I froze, and I didn't have time to think, but it also made me feel like I wasn't valuable enough to be in like that regional role or that executive role, and that I wasn't good enough. And so I've always tried to prove that I was good enough by working hard and harder, but sometimes you don't have that productivity of where someone comes in within like 6 months and they're in those regional roles, and you're like, okay, I have more education and I put in 12, 14, 16 hours. Why am I not seeing the fruits of my labor? So those are the things that kind of in this conversation, I just wanted to share.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to, so as I'm listening to everyone's words, and you start to get triggers, because I'm sure those of us on the line, we've had some scenario that plays out, whether it's being followed in a retail store, okay, being asked, "Do you understand? Do you need help with that?" etc. And it's like, I'm more than capable of doing this. Nope, I got it. Right? Is it, oh, so because I'm from Detroit, I'm supposed to walk in the room and be like, "What up, though?" Right? you know, and or is it, you know, I'm walking, hey buddy, hey kiddo, hey, you know, anything but acknowledging me for who I am and the person that you see in front of me. And my Keisha story kind of rounds it out because you got to know that I'm competent. But again, when you're talking about a dominant culture, when I see someone who looks other than me and they walk into my space, I'm either functioning out of stereotypes and generalizations because this is all I know. So I'm functioning from a space of ignorance, or I'm functioning from a space of fear because I am dominant. And so if I allow you into this space and I know you got the goods, where does that leave me? So the only way I stay dominant is to exert or display aggression, micro or macro, either one. And that's what's happening to us over and over and over again. What I love that we just started to talk about is, so when these things are happening, all of us are saying, I'm having some type of emotional response to this. I'm embarrassed. You know, I'm not comfortable. It caught me off guard. I didn't even know what to say in that moment. It's like, is this really happening? So the next part of my question is, how does it make you feel? And I'm going somewhere with this because when we start talking about emotional intelligence, you will understand why it is important to recognize the signs and signals that your body is giving you when these things are happening. And so share with me how you felt. I heard people say, you know, I caught, it was my pause. There was a pause, you know, my energy was changed. I was like, huh? But were there other things that your body was doing? Or I think somebody said, oh, Kaylon, my chest started burning. What is your body telling you when you are experiencing these micro and macro aggressions? Let's talk about that.
For me,
same order. Yeah, let's do the same order, Deanna.
okay.
Yep.
For me, it's more anger.
Mm.
Because I'm kind of tired of it.
Mm.
A little fed up. So, because it's like at the place we are now, stealing or whatever it is they thought I was doing, it is not directed to a person of a specific color, specific age, nothing. It is an individual's choice. So it's kind of like that's enough. That's kind of how I feel. And I want to act out, but because of who I am, the type of profession I'm in, I have to just play it cute and just walk away. So
you don't want to be the next headline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who else? What's your body telling you? How's it feeling?
I mean, I can honestly say it's kind of like the fight or flight for me. And in the moments where I'm in a room, I'm like, okay, I know I'm a black man. I know that. But I'm like, okay, if I react, this person don't know me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I instantly go, like, this person does not know me. But then I'm going into a fact of, like, I'm embarrassed right now. And I'm nervous that if I say something, I'm already being looked at as an aggressive person. Mm-hmm. So now I'm thinking about everything that I've worked hard for possibly getting stripped away from me based off saying how I feel in the time. And I'm at a point now in life where I'm a little bit better at articulating it and saying, like, you know, I don't need to be asked that again. I'm okay with how I am. But at the time, I'm like, dude, I got it. And I don't need you to say it again. That's what I was thinking in my head, but it was nervousness, frustration, and embarrassment all wrapping me up tight, and I didn't say anything, honestly. But that's how I felt. So
yeah.
I'll also say too, just to Kaylon's point, you know, there's again this tightness that you feel, and because I want to keep my job, you know, I don't say anything. For that very reason, as a black man, well, if I say something now, I'm not just defending myself or responding. I have to put on the professional hat and, you know, say the nice, cute thing, so that you don't feel quote unquote threatened. I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't tell you that what you just said hurt me or offended me. Me saying that again, sort of magnifies this idea of being volatile or aggressive. And so now you get older, you figure out how to sort of navigate. And I've done that now, but before, you got exactly what you wanted. You got the aggressive Stacy,
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, like back to your original question, I felt targeted, and in the same sense, like Stacy mentioned, that aggression comes out. Um, you know, uh, I was thinking about why is it that I feel that way? It's like, have I become like have I conformed to like the behaviors of society is like put on me, like being inside this completely different environment. I'm myself and from Detroit as well, and so navigating into different communities where there are no other, or there a very small group of people like myself, if I've been exposed to them. A lot of times you're not exposed to people like yourself and for quite a long time, at least in my experience. And so until you like get exposed with those people, you're dealing with a completely different culture. And so you just feel like you're in that lens of always being monitored, always having to change your behavior to look and feel a different way. And you get very uncomfortable because you're not who you really are. You have to kind of play and act.
Yeah.
That's
We talk about it. Yeah, you feel censored.
Yeah. And I think that like in those instances, for me, what I felt helpless, and I hate feeling helpless. And then I freeze and I retreat into myself and like, okay, how am I going to navigate this conversation? And it takes me a while to process. So in that moment, I don't have that quick, man, I should have said this. And it shouldn't have to be that way, but it is. And so, and especially when you're trying to work in the professional world, you're trying to make sure that you're seen a certain way and that you are competent and that you belong in that space. And sometimes you feel that other people don't feel like you belong in that space. So again, you try to prove yourself. And so my mechanism of working through it is like trying to work harder. And that is not productive because sometimes it's not appreciated.
Yeah.
And you get burnt out. So
yep, because it causes so many other issues, right? And then it starts to impact your ability to really show yourself self-care. So everything that you all are sharing, I'm sure those of us live on on viewing this, they have some similarly situated experience, right? We've all had them. And you all have brought out some really important points around, gosh, and when I go back and reflect, it's like, I should have said this. If I would have had been more conscious, I would have been done this, etc. And so I have to bring humor into spaces like this because we know it's exhausting, right? Every day we show what we are, a person of color, we are in some minority because. And I tease people because I'm like, not as if my name is not urban enough. I actually do have an alter ego, and her name is Keisha with a Y, right? And so this emotional intelligence thing is serious. It's like, are you gonna get Keisha with a Y, or are you gonna get Shaquanda? Okay, and so those are the decisions that we have to make in a split second most of the time when we are experiencing these. I heard us talk about, when I was 21, I didn't even know what was happening. I just didn't, but it happened so much over time that now we just expect it. And now when we walk in the room, it's like, here we go again with this. But when we say that, we say, now in my older self, I can sit there and I can reflect and I can say, no, thank you. I have it. You don't have to ask me that again. We can start to be more assertive in our positioning. We can be more confident. So I want to switch gears. I want to continue the conversation and start to talk about, when we talk about how we deal with these microaggressions. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Thank you all for your participation in that. Let's just be clear. Microaggressions add up. I don't care how confident we are. People from marginalized, underrepresented groups and communities, I don't care how confident we are in our identities, they create an unsafe space, and they make individuals, they make us feel like we're outsiders. And so I have some good questions coming in. What is your recommendation for others in this situation? Yes, we're going to get to that. And so when we start to talk about it, here's the thing that I had to start positioning myself. When I started examining emotional intelligence, I was like, boy, I tell you, it will set us apart every single time. Do we play in to the stereotypes that have already been created about us, informed about us, or do we change the narrative? So I tell myself all the time, yes, pressure. When we think about pressure busts pipes, but it also makes diamonds. So let's talk about how we invoke this concept of emotional intelligence to make diamonds. So what is emotional intelligence? So let me start by talking about IQ. So your intellectual quotient. One, we know that IQ is a strong predictor of academic success. Alone, it is not enough to set you up for success in life. So Markeisha talked about it. I don't care how smart I am, how many degrees I have, etc. When you do not have the ability to invoke that emotional intelligence, it will get the best of you. So it all of a sudden, in a split second, it didn't matter how hard you worked. It didn't matter how many degrees, how many letters you had behind your name. All of that goes out the window because we do not respond to situations where we are experiencing some form of aggression in a professional way. So emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, that's the mix of skills that tend to take success a step further. It ensures our happiness. It ensures our prosperity. When you ask researchers, they've shown that success at work or in life depends 80% on emotional quotient and only 20% on your IQ. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize and understand emotions in yourself and in others. It's ability to use this awareness to manage your behavior and those relationships. So we typically explain them in 4 parts, and it's part of public domain. So a lot of people have gravitated to it and expounded on what emotional intelligence is. But in its truest inception, it was 4 parts based on connection between what you see and what you do with yourself and others. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So when we talk about what you see, we talked about it earlier, I'm so used to it. We're so tired of it. And we now recognize it when it happens. Emotional tagging is a real concept. What is emotional tagging? It's what we see and what we perceive. And the process of the emotional tagging, what it does is the process by which our emotional information attaches itself to our thoughts and the experiences that are stored in our memories. So the day I went in the store and I was followed, the day that man kept calling me buddy. So now anytime somebody called me buddy or kiddo, I'm like looking at you sideways. I'm getting triggered. Emotional tagging tells you to pay attention to something or not. It also tells you what sort of action we should be contemplating. So it puts you in that fight or flight mode. It gets you in that you're hypersensitive and you're ready to respond to situations. It tells you, am I going to have an immediate reaction or a postponed reaction? Again, fight or flight. But emotional tagging also helps us to make sensible decisions. And that's the part where I want us to really focus on as we talk about how do we make these sensible decisions. So this chart in front of you, emotional intelligence says, I have knowledge of my emotions and I have regulation of my emotions. So perceiving emotions relates to being aware of and recognizing other people's physical and psychological states, their emotions, being able to express one's own emotions and needs accurately, and appropriately distinguishing emotions that are real versus fake. Using your emotions will help you facilitate thought. It involves redirecting and prioritizing your thinking based on feelings associated with those thoughts. It helps you to generate emotions that will facilitate better judgment and memory, right? Y'all gonna get Keisha or y'all gonna get Shaquanda. You can capitalize on your mood changes so that you can appreciate multiple points of view. It's like, okay, am I overthinking this? Am I hypersensitive in this moment? Or did what I experienced, is it really true? Is it resonating with me? Again, using these emotional states is going to help you improve your problem solving and creativity. Understanding your emotions and understanding the relationship between various emotions, the causes, the consequences, the transition between different emotions, all of this is packed into this emotional intelligence. But again, I think the key part, how we making diamonds, we're managing emotions because we're open to both pleasant and unpleasant feelings. We're monitoring or reflecting on our emotions. We're engaging, we're prolonging, we're detaching from our emotional state, but we're managing those emotions not only with ourselves, but in others as well. We know when people are being ignorant. So does that mean we be ignorant too? Or do we just say, oh, you know what? This is either an opportunity to let it go or educate. Most of the work that we are doing, we're so dynamic. The human anatomy, the human species is so dynamic. Most of the work we do is unconscious. So it lacks those checks and balances when we're talking about decisions. So we have to be really intentional about this. We're going to analyze a situation. We're going to use a pattern of recognition to arrive at a decision to either act using emotional tags or not. And all of those processes are happening simultaneously. So when we in those situations and we're like, I just paused because I didn't even know what to say. And then you get home, it's like, I can't believe that happened. Well, when you have those enough, you start to build a repertoire of things and comebacks, right? You start to build a repertoire of how do I just want to deal in spaces where I've been emotionally triggered? And so let me show you what it looks like when emotional intelligence is in play. Because you're like, what does it look like? This is Justice Ketanji when she was being pretty much interrogated during her process. There were times where questions were being asked the person. I don't know if any of you followed that, where it was like you could tell what she was thinking, but her verbal responses were so in tune. They were so politically correct. They were professional, and it really just made her shine in a different way. So much so that it almost went away from the proceedings and just seeing if she, because we know she got the goods. But they were trying to attack her character in ways. They were trying to make her come out of herself. But her emotional intelligence was so in place that it allowed her to stay focused on the task at hand. And the task at hand was to become the first African-American woman justice. Jesse Owens, he's standing there. He's won the Olympics. He has his partner in crime on the side of him, standing in solidarity. He didn't have to react and respond to all the negative press that was out there about him, all the requests to not participate in the Olympics because he was Black, all of the times where he had to go through the back door and up through the elevator where the staff used because they didn't feel like Blacks should be a part of, sleeping in the same hotel, et cetera. He went through all of that and still won tons of medals in the U.S. Olympics. When Vice President Kamala was going through her debate with our former vice president, his interruptions, his arrogance, his ignorance was all coming out at that time. And instead of her, getting Sister Girl and Keisha coming out, she simply said, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. As in, no, I have the floor and I will continue to have the floor and you will wait for me to finish before you interrupt me again. That is calm under pressure. And I'm telling you, that has now become a meme. There's t-shirts on it. There's all kind of, there's different memes out there. You can buy all kinds of shoes and t-shirts and mugs with this simple phrase, I'm speaking, because it went so much deeper than just those two words, I'm speaking. It was us standing again in solidarity together saying, you will not marginalize me. You will not make me feel less than. You will not dismiss me and my thoughts because I deserve to be here in this room. I deserve a seat at this table and I am speaking. And then we have Colin Kaepernick. Again, when you take a bow, he didn't get rah-rah. He just simply kneeled. He just took a bow. And his teammates did that. We're speaking now collectively. When the same thing that dominant cultures have been doing since the beginning of time, you are seeing us, people of color, do the same thing, and we're being recognized for it. And sometimes we have to recognize that it's not just for us as an individual, but it's for us as a people. Because when we go into these spaces and places, we need to be able to participate and be heard. And so as I move forward in this conversation, I'll wrap up by saying from sports to politics, EI can be seen in action. When you as an individual or as a collective are being made to feel like the other, it is you or our collective stand in solidarity or politely reminding someone that you are speaking. These are the actions that set you apart. This is the highest demonstration of emotional intelligence. We get our point across and we still win, and it serves as a catalyst for change. Change in how we're perceived, change in how we are addressed, change in how people move around us, because the aggression that was intended to harm us does just the opposite. And why does it do the opposite? Because we choose to use it to elevate us and not subscribe to the stereotypes that have already been in place. So when you put this together, I like to be able to talk about emotional intelligence. So when we have those scenarios, we're now prepared to say, I'm sorry, is there a reason why you keep asking me, do I understand or do I need help? Whether it's in that moment or later, it's Deanna stopping and saying, I'm sorry, can you tell me why you all continue to stop and ask me, do I need help? If I need help, I promise you, I'll let you know. Thank you. Right? It's Keisha addressing that individual who, well, you didn't protect them. I'm sorry, protect them from what? It's turning the questions around. It's starting to ask them. And so how do we reframe our thinking so that we do not subscribe to these ideologies that we are less than or that we're not meant to be in the room, etc.? We take these aggressions and we use our power, specifically our power of emotional intelligence, to counteract aggression. And we use that again to change the narrative. But again, we've been so used to functioning from a space of a deficit. All the stories about how Black people, people of color, we're first generation college students, we don't have the good books, etc. So we've been conditioned to think this way for so long. What I'm saying to you is when you think about these aggressions that are being out there. So again, what did we say it was? It was their ability or their intent to assert, to gain or defend resources by harmful or damaging means. Well, power is possession of control, authority, or influence of others. Use your emotional intelligence and the power of that to change the narrative. And we've done that because African-American women are now the fastest growing demographic. We're the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs in the United States. There's been 50% growth from 2014 to 2019. We own over a third of the 12 million businesses in the United States. When you look at aggression, it's reactive or without reason. Well, if we're using our power of emotional intelligence, in a way that gives us the ability to act or produce an effect, we win. Students of color make up 45% of college populations. You take it a step further, Hispanic serving institutions grew 94% from 2010 to 2020. Our classrooms are looking different. And when I say Hispanic serving institutions, these are colleges and universities with student populations that is at least 25% Latinx. Again, they grew 94% in 10 years from one census to the next. When we see aggression, whether it's overt or covert, we use our power of emotional intelligence to have more political control or influence. How does that look? How do we change the narrative? There are studies that show that there were history lessons that were focusing on Black and Hispanic contributions to history, and then it proved the political engagement of Black and Brown students. We have seen more Black and Brown candidates for roles across our US government than we've ever seen before. Again, there's power in the way that you think. The last one, aggression is motivated by emotions. Yes, but the power of emotional intelligence, again, I get to choose. I see what's happening and I get to choose how I'm going to respond to it. It increases our ability for mental and moral efficacy. In Tucson, there's a Mexican American studies course that appeared to boost the test scores and high school graduation rates. What am I saying? Stop functioning from this deficit mindset. Start telling asset-based stories to yourself and others, because my dad would always tell me, so as you think, so as you are. If we walk into rooms with the audacity and the ambition and a different narrative, These things that will normally offend us, we'd be like, yeah, okay. Your goal is to keep me in a non-dominant space. But everything that's happening around you is changing. And that power structure and that power dynamic is changing. So I recognize why you might assert these aggressions, but I'm not going to allow it to make me feel a certain way. I'm not going to allow it to have me respond negatively, etc. I am simply going to use that as the fuel to be better. And so somebody asked, how do you have that conversation, Shaquanda? So let's talk about that. I'll try to build in the scenario that we were just going through, but when you're having a conversation about this, because we're having this emotional trigger, right? So there's this emotional trigger, whether it's any of the stories that were shared today, you have to have a crucial conversation. And there are 7 steps to a crucial conversation. When we say a crucial conversation, there is something at stake. The stakes are high. Somebody stands to gain or lose something in that exchange. And so how do we position ourselves when we are at our jobs and this is our livelihood, when we are in school and we need this grade and this teacher needs to pass, we need a passing grade in order to move forward because I need my degree. There are so many things contingent on how we show up. And that's a lot of pressure. But what you don't want to do is walk away and feel like you are missing out on something. So let's talk real quick. Start with the heart. Your supervisor, I really enjoy it. So they've done something to slight you. I really enjoy my job. The work here, along with my classroom experience, is really positioning me to be successful in my field. Learn to look. What is his or her body language and facial expression telling you? Because now you're asking the supervisor to have the conversation. And you need to know the difference between frustration and anger. Think about how they've reacted in the past, if you feel unsafe. And if you feel unsafe in the conversation, and you simply end it by saying, I see now may not be the time to chat. I'll follow up with you later. But then you don't necessarily follow up because you don't know how they're going to react. You simply escalate that situation. But if it's safe, or you can make it safe, you just simply say, I have a question for you, that I would like your input on. Yesterday, when we were in the meeting, you referred to the team as you people. I was hoping you could help me understand your comment. Put it back in their court to acknowledge their behaviors and provide an explanation. Master your story. Stay in dialogue despite those negative feelings. Despite how they respond and react, know what matters to you and why. It sounds like, I'm not asking to upset you. I just want to understand the comment because it was offensive. Make it out there. State your path. I don't know if you know it, but you people has several negative connotations. And so how do you explore paths with others? Be opening to listening to their perspective. They may have, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I said that. I didn't mean it in this way. Or, they're going to kind of sit back and be like, that'll tell you how you need to move. Either way, you need to move into action. What actions do you want to see? Supervisor, I do my best work when I'm in a safe and inclusive environment. I'm asking that you really think about your words that you choose. Reference us as team members. Use inclusive language. And then you ask them at the end, can I count on you to do that? Because you want firm agreements. You want some agreements from them that they acknowledge that what they said was offensive and that they're going to do something different and better. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of how you kind of have that conversation. Now, how do you invoke your power? How do you invoke having a level of emotional intelligence and at the same time, sorry, I'm struggling with my mouse here. At the same time, ensure that you kind of stay in control. Meet with other students of color. You need the support. This is exhausting. I don't care how, like I said, microaggressions add up. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. Talk with your family. Tell them how you're feeling. Engage in activism. I know sometimes activism can be exhausting, but it's those moments that we're empowered to make the change. We're empowered to be the change we want to see. Make sure you engage in self-care. There's nothing more important than making sure that at the end of the day, you're doing some self-reflection, whether it's journaling, how do you just ensure that you have a good mental state, that you have a good emotional state and physical. Identify a mentor. I think it's always good as students of color to have someone who can help you navigate these spaces, because again, your 21-year-old self is going to react and respond differently than your 30-year-old self. Right now, you're somewhere in that early stage, most of us, and you don't know what you don't know. So engage with a mentor who can help you navigate these spaces. When all else fails, every university has some type of student relations department. If you are experiencing things that are really exacerbating your ability to be successful as a student of color, contact your student relations. Share with them the struggles that you're facing. And when all else fails, I'm a big proponent of mental health. Seek confidential help if you are struggling with a mental health problem. Okay. The next thing I want to do is talk about not only are you going to invoke your power, but you're going to be the change you want to see. And what does that look like? We have to confront our own biases. We all have them. We need to not make assumptions about someone who is different from us. We need to treat all people with respect. We need to be open to learning. We need to speak up if we hear someone else being disrespectful. I think someone mentioned it earlier. They kept saying, hey, I think it was it Kayla? Miguel? He said, his name is not Buddy. He has a name tag. We sometimes have to be that ally and speak up for other people who haven't quite found their voice yet. Advocate for safe spaces where students of color can gather. Participate in forums and public conversations. Advocate for more diversity among faculty and guest lecturers and forums. There are studies out there that show that students of color are more successful when they have representation in their faculty that looks like them. Advocate for campus-wide cultural competency and sensitivity training, because again, you're there, you're paying your dollars to be educated so that you can be successful. And in return, you need to be doing that in an inclusive and safe environment. And this goes beyond the classroom. Again, these are also in our workplaces. There's always a level of reciprocity that needs to be understood. I bring something to you, but I also get something from you in return. And so engaging in that ability to have emotional intelligence and be able to recognize I'm self-aware and I can self-manage so that I'm not easily offended, but if something happens, I can quickly address it. But then I'm also socially aware because I understand what's going on around me and I can manage those relationships and speak and respond to those professionally. The one thing that I want to really leave you with is when you invoke your power and you demonstrate and activate your emotional intelligence, you win. So from this day forward, I want you to do just that. I want you to invoke your power and demonstrate and activate your emotional intelligence. And again, from this day forward, I want you to walk into every room like your ancestors sent you there, because you do belong and you do have a place there. And no matter what aggressions are put forth towards you or exerted towards you, you know how to respond to those in a way that allows you to be successful and walk in your excellence. I want to thank you all tonight for having this conversation with me. I am super excited about what you'll be able to do with this information. Before I close, I hope you heard at least one thing that positions you to be one step closer to demonstrating your excellence. But at the same time, I want to make sure I leave you with a tool to do that. So there's a book out there. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It is in that book. If you buy the right one, there is an assessment at the end of it that allows you to take an emotional intelligence assessment, and you can score yourself on how good are you at managing your emotions. I am raffling off 2 of those books. And along with the raffle of 2 of those books, you will have one free session with me to review your report and an action plan around how you can improve on your emotional intelligence. Again, thank you for your time tonight, and I hope you found it to be helpful. We are at 6:59, and so I think it was a time for Q&A, which we can, spend about maybe 5 or 10 minutes doing that for those who want to stay on. And I'm going to turn it back over maybe to the moderator.
Thank you. Do we have any questions out there for the public? So I'm waiting for any questions.
I do have a question. So, hi, I'm Adriana. So we're talking more about like when we're speaking with somebody else, like one-on-one. But do you have any like tips or any recommendations about emotional intelligence when you are going to do like any public speaking?
Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure I'm understanding this in the context when you're doing public speaking and maybe you have someone in the audience who throws a curveball and when they're questioning you or something where you're like, oh, did that just happen? Like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. So again, that's emotional intelligence too. It's almost like there's this formal media training, like you always have to be prepared for a heckler, and how do you stay in control of the conversation? Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I can appreciate that. Sometimes you find humor, you make a joke out of it, but you really want to make sure that you continue to own the conversation. And if it comes down to, okay, that's inappropriate and now is not the time for that, but if you would allow me to continue, then you just continue on in the conversation. It's a facilitated skill. It's a learned skill, but I would always be prepared when I do presentations such as this and any other formal in-person presentations where you don't have control of what people are going to say. I'm always prepared with Shaquanda, what are you going to do in those instances? I think maybe the best example would be the Oscars, where what did Chris Rock do when he got thrown that curveball? I think that was a really great display of emotional intelligence on his behalf. He simply said, oh, wow, did that really happen? He acknowledged it, but he went on with the script.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great example.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any other questions out there?
I quickly ask this, Ms. Shaquanda, in all of this, again, we talk about a feeling. There's something that we feel.
Yeah.
As we work through our emotional intelligence, what do we do with the feeling? Because sometime in those moments, you feel like that person or people, if you will, they've gotten the best of you in that moment.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell you what I do, and everyone is different, right? When someone has gotten the best of me in a moment, silence is that's my power. That's my superpower. I am not going to say anything before I am ready and mentally prepared to do so. But when I speak, trust me, I want you to hear every word and every syllable. So I have to gain composure. Composure is the key. And some of us, when we're feeling those things, we don't even know how to respond. We are in total shock. Like, did that really happen? Once you realize that that is happening, I need you to invoke your power again and just say, I'm going to sit here for a minute. And you might even have to articulate that. I'm not sure what just happened, but I need to sit here for a minute and process that. Or I need to walk away and process that. Because again, what you don't want to do is not address it, not acknowledge that something just happened. And usually what I do is I sit there with like kind of this resting face, but it almost has like a smile on it because I'm processing, right? And I'm taking that minute to process, and I own that because it's my time and it's my space. And I'm comfortable in that silence.
There's a comment that was mentioned, and it says, when you have had those conversations, there are definitely some ill feelings and try to seem like you're a problem person. Is it something that when we talk about processing those feelings and being able to have those conversations using our emotional intelligence, but making sure you hold people accountable, but not having those ill feelings, can you help us navigate that?
Yeah. So I think, here's what I would say to people. Let's deal in facts and less feelings sometimes, because that's the only way you get yourself out of that space of saying, I am really, because the more you deal in the feelings, the less time you have to say, what is the solution? What is the resolve to this? And the feelings, unless they're spoken on, it's only affecting you, because that other person doesn't know how angry you are, how frustrated you are, et cetera. And you take those things. And again, as we talked about, death by 1,000 cuts, they begin to accumulate, and it starts to impact your mental health. It starts to impact your health. Find ways to identify what you need to do to resolve ill feelings. Is it going for a walk? Is it journaling? Is it prayer? Is it talking to a mentor? Is it talking to someone to help you process what you're thinking and feeling? That's what I would always encourage people to do. Tell me why you felt like that. Tell me why that bothered you so much. If you don't have anyone to talk to, ask yourself those questions, because I have to ask myself, like, why did that bother me so much? Is it truly something that I was offended by, or am I just in my feelings? Is it pride? Is it my ego? Is it something that I felt was being taken away from me, and it didn't allow me to see the other person's perspective? So y'all, I'm not crazy, but I do a lot of self-talk, because it is in those moments I'm like, okay, girl, me and Keisha having conversations back and forth, like, girl, listen. This is what it's like, no, the rational part of me, what I love about this tool, this emotional intelligence, when you get your scores, you can go right back to this book, and it references the things that you need to do to be better at self-management. Remember, self-aware. I know I'm angry. I know I'm feeling some type of way. Now, how am I going to choose to respond and react to that? One of the things in there says, watch yourself like a hawk. I have a problem. My face tells it all. I'm like, if I'm happy, if I'm sad, if I'm like, what? It just comes out. So I have had to really practice my face where I'm just sitting there and I'm listening. My poker face. I have had to practice that. I'm not mastered it yet, but I'm still practicing that. So I encourage you to lean into this resource, because it is a really powerful book to use.
Absolutely. And do you have any final thoughts for tonight that you would like to share and impart on people who have participated today?
Yeah. You're not in this alone. Students of color, people of color, we're experiencing these things all day, every day. Like I said, on a regular basis. Don't let it get the best of you. You want to show up and be your best self. And in order to do that, you really have to know yourself and know what makes you tick. I started figuring out what made me tick when I was in college, and my dad told me, he said, Shaquanda, or pumpkin, because that's what they call me. What makes you tick? And I was like, what? I don't know what that means. Take the time now in your journey to realize that, because there is something about the power of self-awareness that will take you so much further in life. It really will. It is my hope and my prayer that you will not have to experience the perils of this world forevermore in this space. But if you do, my hope is that you take the time to be more prepared on how you're going to respond to it, so that, again, the pressure doesn't burst your pipes, that it truly makes you a diamond that shines. That is my hope. That is what I want to leave you with. And I know that we are all capable of it, because we are standing on the shoulders of some mighty, mighty ancestors. And if they've gone through it, we can go. They've paved the way for us to be exactly where we are right now. It is not a coincidence. We are not here by accident or happenstance. We are absolutely meant to be in the spaces and places that we are playing in right now. So when you show up as your best self. And if whatever your best self is today, work to make it even better tomorrow.
Thank you so much. There's a survey in the chat. I know there's a question of, is it okay for us to reach out? You absolutely can reach out. You can reach out to us personally. You can also put that in your survey. And then our website at grahigh.com, you can definitely click on the link and ask for any inquiries for our info at grahigh.com. Okay. So we will definitely be able to help support you through you navigating this world. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone. There is a link to enter the raffle on the website at grahigh.com/education. The videos are recorded and will be available on our social media and also accessible via our website. We want to thank you very much, Shaquanda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You have a good night.
Yes.